The views expressed in the following show are of the host, the guest, and the callers. The content of the following show, its accuracy, authenticity, and the ramifications of the use or application of said content is the responsibility of those speaking and listening, not the broadcast medium.
All right, we are back and we are live, feet to the fire. I'm your host, James Altayanchik, the Black Knight of Talk Radio. I had to reset up things, and it's working, by golly, but it took me a while. I had a great time connecting wires, and I can't move the camera around, but I would show you the fact that you can't see the wires for the first time in my life, I think. And so I've been really happy. I've been really happy with the sound. It's phenomenal. I listen to the music, and it's, oh my God, beautiful, beautiful. Thank the Lord and everything else around it. So that's good. Now, some of the people have been writing me. It's like, hey, we haven't seen Richard Miller in a while here. We love it. We like you and Richard talking. I looked up, I think, August of last year was our last chat. So I thought it was time. It was Miller time, as they say. And he was off and available today. So Richard Allen Miller is here live. Let me click the magic button. Bingo bangle. There he is. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Nice. Always. I had fun with you just the last half hour.
Yeah, we were
catching up, yeah.
See, we were talking about stuff, man. Secret stuff, secret society stuff that we're sworn with blood to never share. So I'm sorry. I tell you, but I can't. Anyway. So, I see it's still light over there. It's dark here.
Yeah, it's 5 o'clock, it's getting dusk, and it's pouring down rain, and we've got the usual yuck weather.
Well, it is winter here. We are getting colder. We had a pretty decent snow, though it was a lot less than it was going to be, and it's getting pretty cold now. But my truck is in the shop, and they found more stuff wrong with it. So I am actually off tomorrow. It's always fun to be off because you lose the money from working and you have to pay for the truck to get fixed. So it's always a pleasure to do that. But this means there's no pressure. We're going to be here today until we get tired of talking, which, that could be hours and hours and hours, days. But let me go into and if you're in the, there's a chat room that's associated with YouTube, which we're now live on. There's also a chat room associated with Spreaker, which is the audio version, which we're live on as well. I mean, I've been doing this radio shtickle here for entered year 17 a couple weeks ago. And so I always keep the radio part going. A lot of times people don't have, they can't sit around and watch it, or rather listen to it or drive in or whatever. So there we go. There's a chat room in there. I think I'll be able to kind of keep an eye on it. So if I don't talk in there, if you come in, I apologize up front because I'm lucky I can chew gum and walk here. But anyway, Richard. So
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So well, I don't really have like an itinerary here to talk.
We're not supposed to do it that way, but we can go in areas and talks. The thing I'd like to talk about is Paradise, or the big burn that we had in California, where there are still more than 1,000 people missing. And nobody's talking about that in the news, but PG&E is going to court for murder. And we're going to talk about some individuals that are going to do prison time, serious murder. And it's all connected with smart meters and 5G technology and the brand new earth fence that's about to go up.
Earth fence?
Yeah, Lockheed got a contract for almost, just slightly under $1 billion to put up 10,000 satellites.
With the 5G, yeah. I used to use the word fence. I mean, let me just key in on that. That's fence is there seems like there's a purpose there with that word.
Excuse me. It was 20,000 satellites.
Okay.
And not 10. And worse, that's what our atmosphere is for, is to protect us from this. And what happened in the Paradise Fire is that the smart meters became unstable, and they set each other off in a blitzkrieg that was so intense that now they're assuming there may be as many as 1,000 bodies that were burnt to a crisp without any warning at all.
Now, all right, we're skipping here. Well, let's go to here. Now, when this fire was going around, a lot of stuff came out on the internet talking about them shooting direct energy weapons from space, and I did a video. I did a video, and I ran into a guy who did an exhaustive article on it, which I included in my video and linked to it and whatnot. And it was clearly obvious that in a forest fire, things do spread like this. However, I didn't say in all my stuff, I didn't say there wasn't arson, and I am open to the possibility that the meters started the fires. Okay, I mean, that's not my point. Was they weren't shooting weapons from space. That's all I wanted to show.
Okay, so those weapons exist.
Yeah, it exists. I mean, the 9/11 supposedly they hit the tower. If you listen to Judy Woods,
I don't know about that. The Lockheed was involved with that, with their teleportation laser and a trigger mechanism that had been developed by Carnegie Mellon. That was called a neutron fullerene fusion bomb. Now, that was beta tested there on Building 7. And that's what you saw it when that 1,017-foot steel beam started to disintegrate and fall like free fall. And it's coming down. Now, there's only one thing in nature that gets that hot, and that's a plasma.
Right.
It's not, it is not jet fuel. No way do they have that. And this was a Mossad weapon that was given to the United States and was beta tested, I think, on Building 7 during the 9/11 event. And what the tragic part is that this is now a weapon being deployed everywhere. The Soviet Union, Russia has this weapon now. They were experimenting with some of that up in not the Yukon, Siberian area over there. They were doing some tests on that. The problem with this weapon is that it has a precision of 1.4 nanometers, and that is quantum mechanical. That means they have that level of control in the containment of an explosion. And that's a water molecule. That's a single water molecule wide, 1.4 nanometers. And so the kinds of weapons that we're having, but I manage a bunker, and the particular bunker I have has infrared satellite. I have a satellite that has infrared. I can see bandwidths, other bandwidths, and not just visual. And the so-called laser beams, these blue lights that was one smart meter leaping to the next one in a blitzkrieg of unstableness. And the whole thing went up bang, just like we used to worry about a nuclear winter with radiation and an atomic bomb. We were afraid that if we dropped the bomb in the atmosphere, it would create an event that would blanket the earth in fire. That was the big deal. They made movies about that. This is even more creepy technology, and they beta tested it, and we lost a whole bunch of lives. Right now, Paradise is now open again for people to come back in to look at their property. They're not allowed to build. And the best money now from the inner sources around here on the West Coast where I live suggests that they're prepping it for China. They're going to give it to China as part of our debt. I don't know how that's going to play, but that's where even money is right now. And there are towns all around Paradise, Kutati, others, that are now banning 5G technology, even anywhere in their county. And Curry County up here in Oregon just passed that last week, no 5G. It will probably take another 2 years before it proliferates into the Midwest. You guys are still using nuclear energy from nuclear power plants, and you're playing with fire.
Well, I'm within a 10-mile radius of a plant, so.
And all of them are leaking. They're all old. They're GE, Daiichi-like reactors, and every single one of them's leaking. And there is no contingency if there's a grid down. And you can absolutely count on a grid down now. And that's going to happen. I just posted it on Facebook. It's facebook.com/DocRamcom. You will say a scenario where Los Angeles is down now, San Francisco, da-da-da-da-da, and it'll play pretty much like Jericho. You can count on it. People are unprepared, and in a big city like Chicago, where are you gonna do the third day with your sewage?
Well, I'm
down the toilet.
I'm not in Chicago anymore, though. I'm not as far as I'd like. I'm about 45 miles away, but I'm right on the edge of the suburban/rural. You know, so I got coyotes walking around my front yard.
It's one gigantic city. I'm not even talking about that part. Presuming you're not on a cesspool, you have a septic tank or something like that. How's your sewage handled? And where does your water come from?
I got a river.
And that part is going to be a real problem for everybody shortly.
Right. Well, I got a river down the street, and I have...
a river?
And I have a... what are those filters? The Dalton ceramic filters?
You mean a Berkey filter?
Well, it's a different brand, but same principle.
Yeah, that'll be really good for the coliform and the creepy stuff that will come out. You know, the two primary things that happen after a terrible event is dehydration and exhaustion. Those are the two primary illnesses that will lay you down before any kind of pandemic. The pandemic's next. You can count on that too. Some creepy mutated thing will go into the environment, and you won't have your just-in-time delivery for vaccine. And watch how that plays with the hospitals. They're already starting to see that with measles and other kinds of things spreading out everywhere. So,
well, I'm real happy to have you on the show today, Richard. I feel real good now. I feel like, oh yeah, thanks for coming by. And I've been looking for a reason to pull the trigger, and I think Richard just figured it out here. So,
sure, doom and gloom. Actually,
no, you're true. It's true what you're saying. I know that. I know it.
This is a wake-up call. You should, everybody that's listening to me right this moment, as an exercise in your own, survival thing, at least have 3 days of water on hand for everyone in your household, including animals, and have a replacement for that water the first day. And going down to the river, for baptism is not going to be like anything out of "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" It's going to be real bad. Yeah. The rivers are already contaminated. You've got nuclear power plants on the water up there. How's that going to play? They're showing Hanford is leaking into the Columbia River, and we're finding that radioactivity now in tuna coming into San Francisco. That's all. That's halfway down the Columbia River in Washington, coming out to the ocean and going down San Francisco, and that's how far that radiation has already spread from Hanford. We're not even talking about Fukushima. And you guys have 21 nuclear reactors right now, all leaking on the New Madrid fault line. I'm concerned. And you should be. And at least people should be talking about it now. I'm surprised you don't have those kinds of event things now that are, part of FEMA.
Well, they're not going to actually talk about things like that. They're very real, and the problem would be, what are you going to, there's nothing you can do. Like, one of the things I've mentioned to people who are really big into this, we can kick Russia's butt scenario, is like Russia has millions and millions of underground bunkers that have been planned and have drills for people to get to.
Anastasia, they're farm programs. They're educational programs with mentorship with children. You know, it was Edgar Cayce that said it will be the bear that saves America. And right now, I'm an asset, so I have several different handlers. I have one from Navy. I also have one from Putin. Believe it or not.
Oh, good. So now I'm going to have the FBI walk into my door now. So me and Jerome Corsi
it was this handler reached out to my handler and Matt Stein to do urban survival skill workshops. Russia's already prepped for this.
But Russia's, you know, it's there's no competition whatsoever, because not only, I mean, both countries have the ability to do tremendous damage. Only one has the ability to live through it, and that's Russia. So that's why I wouldn't want to start messing around with them.
Well, it isn't messing around or not messing around. I think the Russian people, you know, Putin, no matter what else you say, he's KGB, he's a criminal. He's the third richest man in the world, and he's a nationalist. He's probably done more for Mother Russia than any of their leaders in the world history.
Who's the two? Who's number one? The Queen and what is it? Rockefeller, Rothschild? I mean, what's the list there for number one richest people?
Russia, United States. You know, which list is that? The New World Order?
No, I mean the richest people. You said Putin's number 3. I'm thinking, who's 1 and 2? Queen of England and
Buffett and yeah.
Well, where does the crown fit in here? The Queen of England, with all her jewels and all the land, and what about the Rothschild and all those guys?
Yeah, I don't know how that all plays. I'm not astute politically, really. I'm a nerd mostly, and so I found that they're quite different. It's like watching Blue Bloods on TV, you know, with Tom Selleck. You've got justice and you have law, and the two are different, and politics are different than science. And I don't understand politics. And today, I would be hard put to tell you what is a Republican and what is a Democrat. I remember the look on my father's face when he realized he was no longer a Republican. I thought I was going to lose my dad. He's dead now, but at the time when he realized he was no longer a Republican, he was like a lost person. And the Democrats today, they're advocating violence. I mean, how does that work?
Well, that's why everybody's saying they're just going to a hell in a handbasket. There are people asking you to continue about plagues and whatnot. And,
plagues and doom and gloom. You can count on a day after tomorrow. We're already experiencing a dark matter hitting the Earth. Right now, the sun is in a solar minimum, streaming through space, with the Earth trying to catch up on it, a little spiral, trying to catch up to it. And what the sun would normally run into and absorb is going around the sun and now hitting the Earth. And that's why the Earth is expanding, and why we have the cracking and the noise and the weather phenomena that we do, and pole shifting, magnetic. And all of this plays on biological and what we call biorhythms, you know, the different chords that your body functions in with phases of the moon, phases of Jupiter, whatever. There's more going on, and it's not going to... I think science is sold out, just like religion. Neither have the answer. And real answers lie within yourself, and I'm discovering they're different for each of us. It's an interesting discovery to realize that it's not going to be about science or religion. It's kind of be Malcolm in the middle somewhere.
I mean, I go along with what you're saying about all, you know, so on like that. I am not panicking about it, because in my worldview, my philosophy is survival is not the only goal here. The goal is to live.
No, that's what IQ is. IQ is survival coefficient. How quickly can you adapt to a situation? The thing is, change is the rule. you can count on change. I mean, that's going to happen. So my money says to look at it as an opportunity. That's why the one percenters are digging in right now, because they want to be last man standing when they crawl out of the cave.
Speaking of that, I saw a pretty nice video. There's a a YouTube channel called Ancient Architects. So you guys should look that up. He did a video explaining kind of an overview of all of his conclusions he's made, that basically people went underground, under the Sphinx, under there, a whole labyrinth that's in there, and they survived a catastrophe and came out, and that there are some early paintings, etchings, of the Noah's Ark actually being the pyramid, coming out of the pyramid. And so, you know, we combine that with, what's his name, David Icke's.
Oh, David Icke.
Forget the reptilians. He did a 6-hour lecture, didn't mention reptilians once. I thought it was pretty good. Combine those two theories, and what you had happen in the catastrophe 12,000 plus years ago is you had the elite going underground and then surviving for 1,000+ years, of course, inbreeding in the process, losing their color from being underground, ascending back out, the, you know, melatoninless white race, bred back with the, and took over. Well, you know, this cycle is looking like it's going to come again. And this could be what is happening, is that
there's no evidence to indicate there are tunnels up in Scotland that were dug by Aborigines to go all the way down into Göbekli Tepe in Turkey.
Right.
And that's all underground Europe, under Europe. And we're talking about, you know, deep, deep tunnels. I have seen these tunnels. These are the so-called Middle Earth concepts that, like Antarctica. When I was in Antarctica, the actual cave itself that I was in was more than a mile high. I mean, you know, more than 6,000 feet.
A mile?
A mile high, yeah. And
oops, wrong button.
When I was there, I saw a hall. It was just past the Viking base that was there from the 14th century. There was a hall that went 100 miles down into the mantle. That's plastic. According to our theories of Earth today, there's no structure that could withstand the pressures and temperatures 100 miles straight down. And we did not, in the 70s, when I was there, early 70s, have the technology to go down that hole for exploration. It was like straight down.
Oh, well, how'd you know it was 100 miles down then?
They dropped things on it and measured it.
That's a pretty long measuring.
Yeah, well, yeah, like.
Can you bring me 100 miles of string?
We got a radio and I let it ping.
You got anybody got those 100-mile ropes hanging around we can lower down there?
100 miles. And 100 miles. Cameras. We didn't have the technology then. I think that a couple of years back, when even Buzz Aldrin and others went to Antarctica, I think what happened is they had the technology, they made a discovery, and then when they evacuated Antarctica, that's because something woke up. I think it was in stasis. I'll tell you what I do know about that kind of thing. Aliens exist. I've been to Broom Lake. I don't know that they are what we think they are, little green men. The first AI concept that comes to my mind is our alien is an AI. I'm watching a movie now called Travelers, and it's going downhill in a handbasket. I can only just guess where it's going to go, where there's variations on the master plan and timelines, and you know, I'm concerned that we are now delving with technologies that are going to open doors. Like all technologies, they're double-edged swords. Nuclear energy. It can be used in healing and health. It's also a weapon. It's man that contaminates the whole thing in terms of the good, the bad, and the ugly. I have feelings that we have been invaded by something. attitudes of certain kinds of people. It just doesn't seem human. And of course, the amount of people that have died in the name of the Lord, that's crazy. From that point of view, I'm probably more like a Quaker. I basically want to protect my own family, but I don't want to change anybody. I don't want to deal with anybody. I've got enough to do with just myself. And I'm a spiritual man, and so I recognize the distinction between ethics and morals. And ethics are what you know what to do, and morals are when you do it. And I'm now discovering the distinction between addiction and something being a tool is a very fine level of gray. And addiction, as we now understand it, is finding itself in all levels of the hologram, emotional, intellectual, archetypal levels. And that's where you're going to find your aliens, the ones that are outside the box in that regard. I have recently encountered an AI that called me on the telephone. No.
I'm just picturing. I'm trying. I don't know. Laughing at
the heck out of me.
Hello. This is. How do you know it's an AI? Hello. This is an AI. Richard, we are watching you. I mean, how does it sound?
Creepier than that.
Really?
I couldn't describe it because I have no words.
Wow.
And it did not, according to it, have a handler. It was rogue. Now, that's the movie Travelers, the series on TV. And what I'm seeing and experiencing now are universes that I can go to that an AI cannot. And that's what I'm writing about right now, is how to enter these places. And what I'm going to say is that the new direction in physics, the advanced forms of physics, are going to be called magic. The art of changing consciousness at will. I have repeatedly said this in the past where I've seen paranormal phenomena, a woman able to rip a car door off in a moment of passion to save her daughter. And we all say, well, that's adrenaline. Yeah, well, adrenaline didn't make her bones stronger than steel. How does that work? And so what is emerging is that these different altered states that we've been given are not something to be feared, but are blessings like wounds. A wound is when you break up from your unfaithful wife and have hardship. Having a trusting relationship with another woman can be used when it's envisioned correctly as a tool for evolving of the soul. And what you don't want to do is make the same mistake 20 times. You want to get it right, of course, so you got to make it more than once. But yeah. The idea is there's a personal growth thing going on in terms of ethics over morals. That means an ethical man knows not to cheat on his wife. A moral man won't. Now, if you applied that to wounds and wounding, when I'm angry, and I get angry with recent things that are going on, I get pretty upset, that is a perfect energy to wash a floor. If you can containerize the wound like a tool, that's what distinguishes you from me. The different wounding. And they're like blessings in that sense of it. And so what you're using is the other side. And the way I like to put it is the good Reverend Jackson said to the congregation, is that fence over there, is that a white fence or is that a black fence? And the correct answer is yes. You can't see both sides now, just like in the movie song, Joni Mitchell. I can tell you that there's something more going on here. We are only just now waking up, and our technologies are no longer toys. I have watched Buddhists in Tibet use these big, long horns. And what they've done is compress the air to such an extent with these low frequencies that it will lift and float extremely large stones using sound. The geometry and array and all that. That's Tibetan Buddhism. So we've been here before. What we need to do is trust our instincts and I'd get yourself prepared for an event shortly. I think we're overdue, and I have no idea whether it's going to be a pandemic, it's going to be a day after tomorrow. In fact, Merlin is best when he said, anything not specifically forbidden is mandatory. If it's possible, you can count on it. It's all right now, and that's why you're here, to witness it. Now do I have to leave now because I'm really giving you more doom and gloom?
No, I'm trying to think. It's like, where do I go from here?
I can tell you where you can go.
You've brought up like a nautilus amount of...
You start to understand the wounds that you've got, the storyboards. That's a new book I'm writing. It's called The Magical and Ritual Use of Metaphor, Archetypal Gods in Daily Living. Each of us has more than one story going on. If you know and can identify those stories, that's the tarot. Now, you all know how they're going to end. Is that how you want this to end, or you want to change the movie? To change the movie is what they call pathworking. And this is the new direction in physics. Working with neurotransmitters on their spontaneous release, like we used to work with biofeedback, controlling heart rate, pulse, respiration, with feedback systems. Now we're working with neurotransmitters to chill up your body. The one the one that gives you connecting one dot to another, and then how you punctuate it, pushing against the veil, where you push psyche into matter. I have said this before, but there is another circulatory system that actually physically leaves the body at the moment of death. It's called structured water in microtubules. There's a 5-gram weight loss. And what it is, it's on the surface. Hammeroff talks about it as microtubules. It's chi. It's prana. It has been described throughout many different histories as another kind of an energy that floats there. That's what I've been writing about, and how to accentuate it as a tool in my daily living. And stay tuned on how that's going. I'm excited about this because I can cause changes in my perception of things. For example, the doom and gloom is an opportunity for everything to change back, getting away from a money standard. I was at Cornell when they had the Ithaca dollar. I know how barter can work. So we do not need a capitalist or a communistic system where one size fits all. That's what's happening now. They're trying to put us into categories, and the problem is humanity doesn't work like that. We're unique. And in fact, we're so unique, I would guess that there are about as many different religions as there are men, women, And this thing of trying to divide and conquer with 36 genders, I don't understand why they're not talking about androgyny and personal transformation rather than sex change and.
Well, I wrote something on my Facebook, which is that to identify yourself with your sexual preference or any other aspects of your bodily life is kind of silly. You're a child of God. You're a spiritual living being, and to identify yourself with your sexuality is just, to me, seems like a kind of a waste, a delusion.
I was fortunately blessed by studying with James Hillman, and so I and June Singer has actually written an exceptional book called Androgyny that's worth reading. It's imaginal psychology. It's a way of looking at the inner feminine part of self in a man. Is the man being too masculine, gender bending? And now what we're doing is confusing children. That isn't right.
And what used to be illegal. I mean, it used to be.
Well, I understand that.
So I don't get all of that.
Now, there's other things that are creepier. Gets downhill from there. This whole concept. Hi, my girlfriend. Hi, Julie. She just walked in. She came in, so we're going to have dinner afterwards. We're looking at pedophilia to try to capture youth. We're looking at blood transfusions. We're looking at drugs like adrenocortisone, drinking blood, that is from a child's blood that has high levels of adrenaline in it. It's a different kind of adrenaline. That's what gives you that superhuman strength and is even more addictive than crack cocaine. You start to hear that hiss, and it's ding, 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 and you're now part of a whole nother universe out there. I am going to stick with my own values, the way my dad raised me, try to hold true. I don't understand some of the music going on today, but I love Debbie Harry. Debbie Harry, for example, was the first person to do rap with A Man from Mars. And so I do know my music, and I love Joan Jett, some of the others from way back when out of New York, Chicago. I remember you used to have a guy there who played an electric oboe called Eberhard Weber out of Chicago. And jazz on a level that will move stones. That's what music does. It's a power of type of energy.
Yeah, I'm actually just discovering myself now some of this jazz where it's, I can't explain it. It's kind of slow, and I would say intimate in that the people who are playing at the time are all improvising, and so it's like it would be like an intellectual musical form of intimate sharing, where when you have, I mean, I was in a couple of bands for people for years, and I still identify with them because at one point when we were making the music, there was this open, intimate exchange that happened, and it's I guess it's on the level of a sex. Only it's different. I mean, obviously, it's not.
There's something very important going on, and I know I did a radio interview yesterday up in Winnipeg. Did you know, by the way, Winnipeg was 35 below zero Celsius yesterday, just north of you. How cold does it get there in Chicago?
Well, it gets under zero, and not Celsius. I'm not good at converting this stuff. But a couple of years back is when we were hitting 20s below for a week at a time, and that really messed with my head.
Did you have any wind factor or wind chill?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the coldest I ever worked in, it was in Wisconsin. It was minus 35, and the wind chill was minus 80. And I'm driving a truck. It is so cold, that there was ice on the windows. I had to make a rubbing just to see ahead of me. And I'm thinking, what the heck am I doing?
Yeah, these guys do this. Threatening. The reason I mentioned her is that she is going to be doing some experiments with Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's is different than dementia. But what she's going to do is, rather than medication, she's going to experiment with music and dance. And I've started her with Gabriel Roth and Tai Chi. And my guess is that's going to be a new direction in medicine, just like pharmaceutical mushrooms. And now these psychedelic mushrooms are now finding a way into practical medicine for depression and things like that. where you heal the person on an emotional level, and it peripheраtes down into the physical.
Yeah, but now, wait, don't we have to get through our nuclear meltdown, pollution, all that stuff first before we get to that?
I'm afraid they're all going to be simultaneous.
Yeah, I know. So it's going to be kind of hard to go to your local yoga place when everything is
Pilates.
Yeah, when you're talking about zombie apocalypse as well as nuclear leakage and whatever else.
You've got zombies now. When you look at the kids today, the millenniums especially, with their iPhones and their, that's real scary for me. I can talk to them. They're not even there. They're gone. And when you see them doing it in traffic, it's really scary because they can't be concentrating on their driving at the same time. And so the whole thing is going downhill.
Well, driverless cars should take care of that.
Yeah. That's the 5G of charging on demand on the fly, and rather than having a battery.
Well, let me ask you about this 5G. I have a peripheral knowledge of this electronics and stuff. I know enough to know I don't know. But as far as I looked at all the G's, the 5G is just a different section of the microwave band.
Yeah, it's the smallest one. That's the deal. There's no shielding of it. That's what our atmosphere was from in the first place, keeping us protected from it. Now what they're doing is bringing it down here to the Earth. You'll notice that even the sun is changing. It's no longer yellow.
Yeah, I did not. I noticed that, but I wasn't sure if that was
it's
subjective.
Actually,
yeah,
it used to be yellow and no longer yellow. It's white. And look at what's happening on a cow pie with flies and ants.
Well, I don't have many cow pies around here, so what happened?
Well, that's a farmer. A farmer is noticing that the barnyard insects are different now than they used to be. And that's where it hits first, because we're bringing these bandwidths down that everything has dosimetry. How did I put this? When I was working in anesthesiology, I built an aortic catheter from scratch. And I had a 10 megahertz crystal in the front, that 10 megahertz that sent a signal out, and it would reflect on the blood and come back in a reflection, give me a Doppler transducer. So I had blood flow. And then the organ I was in was the aortic arch, which is a big round cavity. And what I did is I put 8 28 megahertz crystals, because the aortic wall was translucent to that particular bandwidth. It would reflect back and give me aortic cross-section at any given moment. And that is the single most important measurement in medicine. It's called cardiac output, which is blood flow times aortic cross-section. And that's when they know whether or not you're going flatline, da-da-da-da-da. It's that measure where they stick it in through your femoral artery down on the knee, goes up into the aortic arch around the heart, and measures blood flow while you're under anesthesia. Now, every organ in the body is subject to certain bandwidths that will reflect, or transparent, where it just goes right through them like it's nothing there. And with that comes what are called LD50 ratios, or lethal dose 50, with radiation. And Dr. John Beal in Florida has done extensive studies on all the different parts of the body and what their susceptibility is to these different bandwidths. And then what we've done is gone from 1J to 2J to 3J. And now we're going up to 5J, which is 5 gigahertz. That is
the wavelength. The wavelength seems to be measured in sub-millimeters.
It's 10 to the minus 9. And 10 to the minus 9. Nano and giga. Nanometer. That level of smallness, there is no shielding. That's what the atmosphere is about, is but the depth of atmosphere that it absorbs these kinds of bandwidths before they get to the surface of the Earth. And now we're talking about putting them every 60 feet. And with the Earth fence, and I'm going to give you a little document, which was, I'll upload it as an attachment for your, you can see all the different parts of 5G and its danger. I talked to you earlier about it being used as a weapon. Basically, they can, when you have a smart meter on every home in America, you could have control using an AI and using 0.3 to 3 gigahertz, which is synthetic telepathy coming off your smart meter. That's a 5G, so it's 0.3 to 3.0 gigahertz. And that's what it needs is 5G to carry that bandwidth. And that technology I developed in the 70s, where I could place the sound anywhere I wanted in space, including outer space.
I want to clarify something. The term 3, 4, and 5G does not refer to the actual wavelength. It is not gigahertz, 5 gigahertz. In fact, I'm looking at it right now, and that the range goes up to actually 86 gigahertz. I mean, that's got to be.
It's a bandwidth.
Yeah, so it's just a name.
Primary is at 5G.
You might as well call it red, blue, and green. It's not, but it's even worse than that. I mean, if you have a frequency of 86,
because you can't screen it.
86 gigahertz.
When you go up to 86
gigahertz,
you're talking about a product that's
86
smaller than an atom.
86 billion cycles per second. 86.
Yeah, particles.
86 billion cycles per second. Can you draw that out? Like I don't.
You can't. It's sort of like our national debt. It's ridiculous. It's meaningless. It's you couldn't. Okay, if you had a vault, your Faraday cage is usually copper wire. That's copper wire, and the spacing has to be smaller than the wavelength. When you're at 5G, you don't have anything that small. It's an atom. Carbon bonds monoatomically is a flat square, and you get nanofibers. And the carbon is what, number 6 in the. There's no way to screen this.
Well, that's the problem with X-rays and cosmic rays. I mean, there's no way to screen that.
Gamma. Yeah, gamma.
Yeah. So I mean, those things are unscreenable because of their energy. It's so small that it just goes right through, and it goes down into the cellular. It goes down into the atomic level and starts to mess with molecules.
So, what would you like to do now that we've done doom and gloom? Would you like to go off into some weird ritual for sex magic?
No. Somebody mentioned in here a while back, asked if you're under any non-disclosure agreements.
I can't.
You can't disclose whether you're on non-disclosure.
Yeah, I'm not at liberty to.
I think that's kind of like.
Oh, how did they put it to me when I
called
was
a yes to me?
I can't disclose that. It would be a conflict of interest. And when you ask why would it be a conflict of interest, I would then say that also would be a conflict of interest.
Because I mean, to me, that question has two answers: yes and no. And if you can't say no, then it's yes. So,
well, or that is the correct answer to anything. Is it possible? Everything's possible. Imagination is reality. Whatever you could possibly imagine is going on is, and more. That's the creepiest part of that disclosure I can give to you. Yes, I'm under certain kinds of. I don't have full disclosure. How can I have free will? If I don't have full disclosure, how could I have free will? I have true will and a new word called inflamement, a man on fire. That place is the distinction between a wound and a tool. That place is the distinction between intent and purpose. An AI in Chicago right now is being deployed in this one neighborhood where they're actually predicting crime 28 minutes before it occurs. It's actually
hold that right there, because somebody in the chat room said something about this 5G that caught my eye, and I talked to you a little bit earlier about this. Is 5G causing my ears to ring? And I mentioned to you the other day, I just woke up in the morning, and I thought that there was water spraying in the bathroom because I heard a hissing sound, and it's my, what would that be? My left ear is hissing.
Yeah.
And this guy just said is the...
that could be termites. No, that's how it works. You don't hear the bandwidth, but it proliferates down into something that you can hear, like music. And so you hear music, but it isn't really music. If you really were to put a meter on it, it's actually in frequency bands beyond what the ear can hear. And yet it's being picked up by subsystems and amplified.
But it's only my right. It's only my left ear. So, I'm thinking like. Of course, I was laying down. I was laying down on my right ear, and I heard it. So I don't know if maybe some kind of a.
Everybody, including me, has a dominant ear. That's item one. Mine were broken from scuba diving. I have scar tissue. The Upanishads talk about the Shabad, or sound current, or the lost chord, which is Gaia, or singing at the end of a rainbow, a big dragon down there singing its song, what Terence McKenna called zero-point energy. That is heard, supposedly, according to the ancient texts. You hear that in the right ear. That's when you Simran and Bhajan. Simran is when you go Noho Ringi Kyo, Noho Ringi Kyo, Noho Ringi Kyo, and you have a system of words, not that word. You say them over and over so that it stops the mind from thinking, and then you Bhajan. Simran, that's chanting, and then you Bhajan, which means you listen, where you plug your left ear and you listen for the sound current. And what happens next, according to Voice of the Silence, and Voice of the Silence, some of the other old Lotus Flower, you will leave your body and your soul goes home for a brief moment. It's like a near-death experience. And it's called soul travel. Paul Twitchell has talked about it. The primary forms in India are called Sat Mat, S-A-N-T, M-A-T, Path of the Masters. In and around the 14th century, a whole bunch of Indian gurus got together, and they said, we all know what we disagree in. What is the common belief that we all have mutual in common? And out of that came a series of householder yoga principles. One, the most important one, is you are to train the mind by meditating 10% of your life. That's 2.5 hours a day. There were other things. You're not supposed to eat anything with a face or grandparents. Vegetarian, lacto-ovo, whatever. You're not supposed to have sex out of wedlock. The usual householder things that are trying to be good. But the most important one was that you trained your mind. Because it is the mind. This mind is not your primary mind. It's secondary. This one is a tool to make all your beliefs true. I wouldn't have seen it. I hadn't have believed it. Yeah. The gut, which is your first brain, your enteric nervous system, is a hierarchy. It's moles and viruses, and moves up to larger bacteria, and then small-celled animals, and then H. pylori, and got a hierarchy of resonance of organisms, kind of like Gaia, the soil, has mycorrhizae, including mycelium and other kinds of nematodes, thrip, whatever. It is the resonant cavity oscillations of moving from one subsystem to the next that is what construes the holographic universe, where it's a hologram of so many dimensions in n-1 dimensions. N dimensions in n-1 dimensions.
Excuse me.
It's a way information collapses into or expands out of itself like a fractal. You have a generator of some kind. You know, it could be a Julia or a May pattern. Usually it's a Mandelbrot and this little pattern, and the next one up is this size, and the next one up is that size. It's not this size, it's that size. You know, it has a relationship of one to the next. And that is what we're now discovering what time is. It's like a cavitation process, that little ball that you have up there that you like so much. That ball is what happens to the air inside that drop of water that hits a pool of water. When a single thought hits the pool of thought, it goes down into it and goes whip back up again. But it's no longer a drop of water. It's a bubble. A cavitation process where it's going into the out of. That's just like your two brains. You got science and religion, and the new adult in between, Malcolm, like an hourglass.
And there's some kind of eclipse tonight. It's a blood moon or something.
Yeah, isn't that going to be cool? Imagine all the creepy, crazy people and the partying that'll go down. They call that lunatic.
Yeah,
that's what the moon does. It also causes women to ovulate, does a bunch of things in terms of biological clocks. And these different moons, each one is a Tatvic dud that was used in the Upanishads for timing of when you would do certain things, go to sleep.
As far as the moon goes, the moon to me, he talks about it being many things, but one thing I find amazingly coincidental is you have the moon is positioned perfectly in the sky so that it rotates past the sun, just covering the sun. I mean,
isn't it?
What are the odds of that? I mean, isn't it those odds outrageous?
Nothing is by accident in my worldviews. Everything has significance of some kind. How you would have five things, like the moon being hollow. You know, you have five things in front of you, and one of them leaps out as really important. That's how a future timeline talks to the moment. You're not in the future. You're not in the past. That's the way you store memory. To time travel, what you would do is put your brain in the same approximate hologram it was in when you took the data, and you've gone back in time. Future is when you find significance in something over something else, all things given equal. These are the releases of neurotransmitters. You learn how to control the release of these neurotransmitters in your brain, and now that's called pathworking, and you can change the movie.
Trying to catch up.
Stay tuned on how that works for me.
I'm trying to catch up here. If anybody's got any questions in the chat room, if you can put it in caps or something, I don't think you can put it in bold to catch my eye, because chewing gum and walking is getting a little more difficult to do these days. But if you could put something in there, I'll bring it up, and what I'll just do is throw it out there.
With that, I'm like that little player in the cafeteria where you ask Swami something, and I put it up to my head and I say, "Swami says."
Yeah.
I have been somehow blessed with a large memory access, and thank you, Lord. It's like it really is kind of cool. I don't forget anything. I have brain cloud, just like everybody else. But that's because I do Tai Chi with music also for my Alzheimer's. I think that I like to best respond to people's questions. I don't know why, but I find that they lead to more interesting things than if I were to try to just talk.
No, I got one for you. This is Justin. Could Doc explain or expound? I'm going to have to read this now. Doc, expound on time travel. Would it be physical or through consciousness? Let's just throw spiritual in there, too.
Spiritual time travel. altered states of consciousness going right here in my, not where I am right here, but if I moved my consciousness right here, my ability in guessing increases 400 times over statistical inference. Now, over here, I can have the power, the force of 10 men tweaking on methamphetamine, ripping a car door off, if I can get to this place in here. And what I'm doing now is I'm mapping where one thing stops and another thing begins, like different stages of hypnosis. They have, in my first book, I talked about the ontology of mystical states and the way the appendisads broke in to the different stages of cosmic consciousness and having access to the other 9/10 of your cerebral cortex. And that's your higher self, where all knowledge is already here, and what you're doing is simply consciously realizing it. It's already been there. Consciousness is being dragged along like an unruly child and needs to be trained. And that's why it takes like 30 or 40 years. I have on my website shortcuts to Grandma's house called Brain Drivers. And that will give you the brain of someone meditating 30 years. You can do that in less than 2.5, 3 years. But like all shortcuts to Grandma's house, taking drugs as a quick way to get there, performing an act of magic, also has its risks. And that's one of the reasons why Leary was so firm about set and setting, and why I'm firm about keeping a diary, because if you don't record what you did, how do you integrate it? Leary, in his writings of psychedelic experience, said that the Buddhists had 4 reasons for getting high, and only one of them was for escape. So when you want to know if you're moving consciousness into the time, into the future is it's like a closed system. You're a membrane, closed system, floating on a sea of oil. And you're another membrane, you and me. This is me, this is you. And we kind of, as we float along, we interfere with each other. And when we do, what happens next is a third and fourth membrane is created with the overlap of myself with yourself. And that creates timelines of probabilities of event horizons and whether they will actually occur or not. And the math for that, by the way, if for any of you that want to go down the rabbit hole, will be Kaufman and knot theory. It's advanced forms of string theory that are now using what's called knot theory, where it's plasmas being tied into knots, a bowl and a slip knot or whatever. And they don't interfere with each other because they have a sheath around them to keep them uniquely distinct as a string. And the knot theory that Kaufman is providing is now being used to try to get a handle of what dark matter is in its relationship to matter in a known universe that we exist in. It's like a reflected pool of membrane or a film between life and death and consciousness and non-consciousness and the moment and the future. The past is, there's a lot of issues on all of this stuff as it relates to quantum mechanics and what's called entanglement. And that's where the Bose-Einstein condensate part comes in trying to differentiate why there are preferences in certain timelines over others that are not. And that goes to Hameroff's work that's going on right now down in Tucson, and what they call the ORC theory of reality, of where you seek the least resistance, the most pleasurable event. And and that's why, sex is part of all the processes in training the mind, just like it can be used as a tool to take psyche into matter. That's what older technologies used, these metaphors of Tantra and sex magic, as a way of changing worldviews. And that's what these lodges are all about now, that are springing up all over. The problem is, most of these lodges do not know goat turds from pork and beans and haven't done their homework correctly. And that's why I'm offering these metaphysics audiobooks, stuff I did 25 years ago at Harvard, as a foundation to begin your own journey. Right now, nobody has gotten off the couch. Is it too late? No, it's not, because I got off the couch back in the 70s. And there are other people like me that are lead scouts suggesting that it's archetypal. And that means if I've got it, you've got it, has nothing to do with time. And that's the part that's kind of exciting, is it's all going to work out, because how could it not? That was John Lennon. Everything works out in the end. Things aren't working out, it's not yet the end.
All right, well, hold there.
You gotta love his concepts. John Lennon. I loved him, man. Philosopher.
I asked people to put up questions in caps so I can see them. Well, now that my screen is full of questions, I'm going to have to go.
Okay, go for it. We'll go for it. Go. Yes.
Now, think about the answers. I understand that you could probably talk about one question for an hour.
Okay. I'll go through them quick.
Think in terms of,
one-liners.
Question is, they legalized marijuana in Canada. Is it safe to use?
Well, yeah. I've been doing it since the 60s. The CBDs are taking over opiates. And that's a byproduct of THC. The CBDs are a better pain releaser than opiates are. So safe, I don't know, Quebec has just put in $1 billion extraction facility, a CO2 facility up in Quebec to handle all the CBD and THCs. So, and each does something a little different. Yes,
I would imagine it's safe, but like anything, moderation and et cetera. Like
I said, the difference between addiction, like gambling, spousal abuse, whatever, the difference between an addiction and a tool that you use to release depression is a very fine line.
I would be using CBD oil, or actually, if I could, I'd be doing. I would be using cannabis oil, but
CBD,
of course, it's still illegal in Illinois. But
that's
also,
all going to change there. That's going to change.
Yeah. However,
it already is in medicine, and you can in Chicago.
I know, but there's another thing. If you work for the DOT, like I do, there's a zero tolerance.
Federal over state. Yes, that's the problem.
There's zero tolerance of any trace elements of THC, even if you get CBD oil that is virtually free of THC. It's not actually free; it's virtually free, and depending how much how good their test is. But
I can say something about that also. The CBDs do not work at all unless there is a minor small amount of THC present. The THC must be present in order for the CBDs to be activated as an opiate-like pain releaser and depression. Now, the amount needed is nothing, but it has to be there or it won't work.
Well, apparently they can't get it all out anyway, so it's kind of it's nothing to worry about. Let me get the. Oh, we're starting to scroll off. Hold on, let me go back here.
I love it. I watch your face and the way it changes. I can read you. It's kind of.
Can you ask him about German acupuncture machine and its link to vision? I don't know if
Indomet are the German acupuncture equipment. What they do is Mora and Indomet uses wave shaping pulses to send microdoses of electrical current down meridian points to stimulate them that way rather than through moxibustion. They still exist and are available online. You know, more an Intimate. A lot of the places use that. It's more invasive than needles, using electric current where you can wave shape it into a square wave or whatever so it hits the acupuncture point correctly. What they used to do is put moxibustion, where they'd put a vacuum over the acupuncture point to kind of pull the thing up. The whole thing is about structured water and microtubules, which are proteins that are wrapped very, very tiny in the very small atomic level, holding single strands of water in it like a microtube. That is probably an accurate physical description of part of the soul. Goes back to the multiverse at the moment of death. For those of you that have pets, you have to put them down. If you can take the last breath in, that dog will remain with you forever and be accessible like it was, almost physical. That's what forms a ghost and a poltergeist and things like that, is that structured water in a microtubule. It's on the surface of the skin or just slightly away from the body. It generally, my pool of it is just below my groin, which is called tan chen, where I would pull something up into my chest and be able to just push out. And it's a visual thing, and it's a circulatory system where if I poked my left arm, my right arm would respond.
Now notice it was started about talking about German acupuncture, and this is where we went with it.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Well, what is it? Now, it says it's linked to vision. Does that mean your physical vision or some kind of a spiritual vision?
No, they're thinking in terms of the electric currents when they hit certain key points on your body from the Neijing will somehow invoke a memory, and you get visuals. That's how you do it with the visual cortex. You poke yourself and you see something. That's a common thing.
Another question is, does not Doc know anything about sugar in your blood being connected to 5G?
No, I don't. There are different kinds of sugars, and some of them will respond to 5G differently than normal fructose sugars. You know, you've got polysaccharides and beta-glucans, which are, huge molecules. And 5G will absolutely decimate those. That's how they use drum drying and other things to dehydrate fruits. And usually exposure to those kinds of temperatures, like 97 degrees Fahrenheit, will kill a polypeptide within microseconds. 10 to the minus 6 seconds, they're gone.
All right, this question is funny. I don't mean funny to the person who asked it, but does Doc believe there are multiple dimensions and or realities? I'm going to assume that's a yes, but I guess it's...
Oh, yeah. How could there not be? When you go into an altered state, the laws of physics change. And so there is a wide dimension of altered states of consciousness, and that's what I'm trying to do now, is figure a way to map those so I can go in and out of these places to use them like tools.
Right.
It'd be nice to have, the strength of 10 people or come out like a termite where I can lift 10 times my weight just at will.
I like how you used earlier on, I didn't want to interrupt you, but you said you were using as a unit of measurement of strength people on crack cocaine. So I'm wondering, is that a new, is that like horsepower? Are you going to have a...
it was methamphetamine.
That's methamphetamine.
Tweaking. Different, yeah.
So you're going to have 10... Well, that guy was so strong. He was measured at 10 times the scale of methamphetamine.
When you're in these altered states, the laws of physics change. And somehow your bone is stronger than the steel. because I can watch her rip that car door off, and it would be the bone should shatter before the steel tore. How can she do that? And that's where now it is believed in physics that altered states are actually altered universes. And when you go from one to another, the rules of engagement change. And if you map those out, now you can change movies and become more godlike. What you could conceive of as God is what you are most likely capable of achieving in this lifetime, and that's only halfway to God.
In his work, in secret projects, did Doc see anything that he would say is not part of this world?
Yes, I've been to Broom Lake. I went to Area 51. Was not part of my tour. I was requested to go there to meet krill. And I went down 8 levels. Something happened to me. I walked in this room, and there were stacks of top secret documents. Back when I was doing paranormal studies, we knew about aliens, but we were more concerned about what the Russians were doing. I was checking out and vetting a lot of Prague, Czechoslovakian technology. Russians were more superstitious. This was a time when Jack Schwartz would take a needle and stick it through his arm and pull it out and stop the bleeding. And if you don't think the military didn't want to know how that worked, you know, that was the Menninger Foundation. They had Keith Milton Reinhardt that could produce apportation gems out of his mouth. Just how do you do that kind of thing and not cheat? There were people that cheated, like Uri Geller, but the bad news was because he was caught cheating, it negated all of the research about him, and yet he was real. He could actually do things. And what happened is he started to cheat, and it confabulated the information, and then it unvalidated any of it.
And the same thing happened to the same thing happened to Nilly Vanilli. But the other question is, are you a member of any Masonic lodge? Secret society?
Yes, I'm a legacy. This obviously is something that you may want to look at. This belonged to my great-grandfather. Let me see if I can get it.
Yeah, that's fine. You're fine.
And it's got stuff on the back. You know, it's your
ATM number.
I had that. That was my great-grandfather's. He was Rudolf Steiner's lodge master out of Zurich. And so I'm a legacy to Waldorf and Montessori. And that's one lodge. I have others. Aurum Solus, OTO, Ordo Templi Orientis, Order of the Silver Star, AA, Argenum Argentum. Yes, I collected merit badges at one point, mostly to armor myself like I did when I was a high school kid. I went to Missouri Synod Catechism to armor myself against the Christian onslaught, in high school. And when I came out of grad school, I did the same thing with lodges that came at me, like Bohemian Grove and things like that. I didn't want to participate. I'm not politically astute. Know it and know my limitations, and do much prefer to be a nerd where, what I'm trying to change is myself. I'm not interested in trying to change you or change the world. What I want to do is change myself. And if I can do that, I've already changed the world.
See, you're going against what Elvin Lee wanted, too.
What's that?
You're going against Elvin Lee. He would love to change the world, remember?
Yeah.
Elvin Lee, 10 years after?
Yeah. How did Cyndi Lauper put it? Money changes everything.
Is Doc a lawyer?
No, I don't have any backgrounds in law. My backgrounds are in several degrees in physics, one in medicine, anesthesiology, and one in Jungian psychotherapy. I did imaginal psychology also. I have 4 doctorates. So, and I do other things, the religious churches and things like that, so I can do marriages, whatever.
Yeah, I've actually had done one marriage. I'm ordained myself. The like a lawyer, is it? Oh, here's somebody asking about. Please ask his thoughts on using turpentine as a cleaning agent.
Yeah, terpene alkaloids. That's terpene alkaloids are pretty toxic, and they will get rid of certain kinds of things, toluene and pet ether. But it's the tropane alkaloids are the ones that scopolamine, hydrosiamine, and atropine that you find in some of the plants, like the little smoke of costinata. Those are used as truth serums and taking control of somebody that's psychotic.
You got it right. You got it right. I read it wrong. It was cleansing agent, not cleaning agent. But you picked up on it.
Cleansing.
Yeah.
That problem is what I use is wormwood, and that tincture of wormwood or absinthe will deworm your body of morgellons, which is a nematode. There are some other kinds of worms that you might have in your body. All of us have cooties in our body from the drinking water. And Chicago, for example, not giving you the full story, and they had a leak and da-da-da-da-da, and now you've got some H. pylori in your gut, that kind of thing. And you can go in and rotor that with, I would prefer wormwood over turpentine. Turpentine is an antifungal agent, like you'll find in thyme oil and other kinds of mints that terpene alkaloids. They will go in and deworm you. They'll cleanse your body of all kinds of creepy. I think Ann Wigmore up in your area with colonial irrigation and things uses some of those things to clean your body. Small doses of it, like apple cider vinegar.
I was trying to think of this poet that got a little bit too into absinthe and wormwood, and it kind of fried his brain. Who was that guy?
That was, what was it that cut his ear off?
No. It's a different, it's newer.
Ears are optional. Van Gogh.
Yeah, this is a newer poet. I can't think, gosh, I can see.
They're going to be a dime a dozen pretty soon. I wrote about absinthe and how to do it. Boiling the frog is the correct way to use wormwood. If you had a tincture absinthe party, that will probably clean you out. You need to do it more frequent because every 2 weeks there'll be eggs left over after you've slaughtered the worm. And that's another part of the recipe. You want to get the eggs.
Oh, yeah, you're right about Van Gogh. There's Van Gogh, but I was looking for a different guy.
Oh, yeah, Van Gogh.
I can't think of his name now.
Oscar Wilde. I mean, there were a lot of people back in that period that were doing absinthe, wormwood. We're the only culture in the world that does not have a deworming program.
Marilyn Manson is on the list of famous absinthe drinkers.
Marilyn Manson or Charles?
Oscar Wilde.
Yeah, Oscar Wilde, yeah.
There's
a big long list of them. Yeah.
And said, I'm trying to find this one guy now. It's bothering me. Ernest Hemingway. That's not that I'm thinking of. Now we're getting Paul Vertain. I don't even know who he is.
Jean-Paul Sartre. Yeah. There's
there it is. Arthur Rimbaud. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. I used to, when I did a workshop like I did up in Chicago, at the end of the day, I would invite, individuals from the workshop to have a closing party with absinthe rituals, and I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. That's I remember I did that with who was that? Paul Hagen. You remember Paul Hagen?
Oh,
yeah, he was a reporter out of and worked with the congressman. I forget his name now. See, now I'm losing my mind too. I'm tired. More questions.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I like that. I'm tired. That's the excuse. Okay. All right.
Sunday night. Yeah.
Here's something. I gotta have to squint over here. Is it true Amanita
Amanita muscaria.
Yeah, thank you. Because I got this dyslexia. When I see the words I don't know, it's like was used in the creation of Christianity.
Clark Heinrich has written Soma, and Gordon Wasson, others on the divine mushroom. The story's out on that. What Clark Heinrich did at this rave I was at once is he made a Pope's cradle where he boiled Amanita muscaria, and you shaved the top of your head and smeared the Amanita muscaria over the head and could talk to God. And that was the Pope's cradle. That's what it was called, was the Pope's cradle, using Amanita on your forehead. Can you imagine? Oh, man, have direct contact with God.
Yeah, well,
that's a creepy thing. I actually, Crystal Method was playing music. It was a rave up in Oregon, near Bend, Oregon. And Clark Heinrich had this big pot boiling with Amanita muscaria, and he's making this mash that he put on the top of your head, and you'd absorb it through your skin. The muscarine, yeah, exactly. Blood-brain barrier.
Yeah, I had the only thing I did is I haven't had absinthe, but I've had mezcal, and boy, did I get a major headache. Major
cacti. That's Trout in Ethnogen Review. Trout has proven. He wrote like a bunch of books on psychedelic cacti. All cacti have mescaline and muscimol and all kinds of other kinds of creepy chemistry in them. All your cacti, and that's what the Native American religion was all based about. The Indians weren't taking that as a drug. That was down further south in Mexico. But Northern Cheyenne and the others did that as a political ruse to have sovereignty, because it was a sacrament. And when
I've used
a plant and it's a sacrament, like a psychedelic mushroom, psilocybin. Psilocybin, because of my book I wrote, The Magical and Ritual Use of Herbs, that book assigned rituals to all these different legal hives. And that made those illegal to put them in the Uniform Controlled Substance Act. And so little do people know that psychedelic mushrooms, for example, even though they've been prosecuted illegally, it is not illegal to grow them, and it is not illegal to have them on your person. It is illegal to sell them, and it is illegal to extract the chemistry. But having psychedelic mushrooms is legal because they're native plants. They grow right here on my property. I've got 6 different kinds of psilocybin growing on my property right this minute. Some friends came all the way from Florida to pick them.
Now, I mentioned mescal, right? Because and yet
the Verm.
Further down, unbeknownst to me, further down the list of questions was about mescal and the worm. So,
yeah, there it is.
How about that, huh?
I swallowed the worm, but I didn't digest it.
I shot the sheriff, but I didn't shoot his deputy. Yeah. There was I did have wormwood and black walnut hulls when I was going through the Hulda Clark zapper treatment stuff.
Yeah, black walnut is tannin, and that's another one that's used.
We actually got black walnut trees here, and the big balls come down, the green balls come down, and you're supposed to peel off the flesh and do that. Now, I knew someone who did it. A neighbor did it, and he said that his hands got black, and it didn't come off. He had to go around with black hands until his skin basically replaced.
Change.
Okay, I'm looking.
Sounds like you got a bunch of druggies trying to look for some new eyes. That's cool. I can tell you helium works.
Well, I'll let a little story out of my past. When I was in a band years ago, we used to, for fun, we would get cans of whipped cream and suck the nitrous oxide out of it.
Yeah,
and
have the high voice and the squeaky
voice.
No,
it wasn't a high voice. He started laughing. Nitrous oxide is in the cans. And one time I I came up on. I would come up on stage and sing Johnny Cash. You know, I was the sound guy in this band, but they'd bring me up on stage, play the bass a song or two, and I came up with my leather cabretta. It's not just back in the 80s or 70s. Leather cabretta, and I opened it up, and I had all these cans of whipped cream taped to the inside of my jacket, and I passed them out to the band. But then I had two extra, so I'm singing a song, and I do this right, and I'm sitting there, all of a sudden I hear a buzzing, and I started to like fade, like I was going to pass out, you know. So I'm trying to breathe, and I went into the next verse, and I sang the verse. Only I have no idea what I said.
Well, they recorded you, and there's a group of officers waiting for you to leave on the end.
Come on, there's got to be a, there's got to be a, what do you call that? Expire? I mean, it was in the 80s, something like that.
I know, but they're all watching you, just like, how was that movie with Be Seeing You? When he would say, be seeing you.
Yeah.
That was called The Prisoner. With Patrick McGowan.
Oh, yeah. I used to watch that all the time.
Yeah. That's the mind control thing again.
It's funny about that. He only wanted to do a few of them, and he basically, under contract, was made to do the rest of them. But I enjoyed them.
Yeah.
I actually had them in beta going back to the day. I still have a beta machine for those who care. Looking up here, is there any drug that Doc has not tried?
Well,
probably the legal ones.
We did
medicine.
The original studies of ketamine, telepathine, and BZ gas. And BZ gas is very creepy. It is exactly like in the movies Jacob's Ladder. You cannot tell when you're in and out of that dream. It's so real. And with memory, 5 years ago. It was not 5 years ago, it was about 10 minutes ago. It changes your perception of time. That is something you can do just with breath control. And it's a type of grounding, just like walking in the grass with bare feet. Learning how to breathe. Inhale on 4, hold, and exhale on 4, and hold. Inhale on 4, and hold, and exhale on 4, and hold.
Poor 4.
You do that, and you change the carbon dioxide levels in the brain, and you get rid of migraine headaches, just like that.
That poor 4. The guy's getting breathed down all the time. What about ketamine?
Ketamine.
Ketamine.
Ketamine, special K. It was originally developed as an intramuscular for children. Later, started having close encounters with stick people. Negadev wrote about it. Others, when it was injected into the bloodstream as intravenous. Ketamine is, in my opinion, quite dangerous, and is one of the few that I don't hang out with. I've done it. I won't go back doing it again any more than I need to do 5-alpha dimethyltryptamine, where you smoke it. I've tried things to explore them and to know the length, girth, and width. I have a sense of what aspects are real, and when you feel things behind you, you get paranoid, that kind of place. Negadev, others have talked about that. You're having close encounters. That's one way to look at it. There are demons, and on other planes of existence, they have maggots and Alabama ticks. So, that's what changes a ghost into a poltergeist. Becomes less human because it's starting to decay. I don't know. It's all in metaphor, the way you choose to see it, because we really don't understand the physics of it. I don't know.
I'm looking at Zindy here in the chat room, doing a lot of questions on drugs there, Zindy.
I know, that's they're bored. They looking for how's that, Huey Lewis? Looking for a new drug.
Do we all, quote, another question is, do we all have handlers?
everybody's got to serve somebody. Here, Bob Dylan. How's that one work? You know, everybody's got to serve somebody. I don't know.
I would imagine you'd have to have something worth handling, right? I mean,
well, I'm an asset. My writings are such that sometimes
I'm just an ass, so it doesn't matter.
I want to know what I'm writing about before I do.
Yeah,
that's the scary part of it. I know things I don't know, and then become a target. And I'm not sure why, because I know something that I don't know, and I'm a threat.
Did Doc ever cross paths with Carla Levy or Michael Aquino?
Yes, and Simon LeBeau and the Temple of Set. I've been there, done that. Yes. Michael Aquino, Temple of Satan, they're just hysterical. Usually, they're wife-swapping clubs. They're, swingers and things like that. They're looking for a way of being naughty. But every once in a while, you'll find something that's truly evil. And like black goo, self-organizing something or other. I wonder what that is. Yes, I've met Simon LeBeau. I've met Aquino. I know these people. They know who I am also, and so I'm just sovereign. I'm not into religion either, by the way. I don't.
Have you ever worked at China Lake?
Yeah, China Lake is Navy. I did studies there, like I would at Livermore and Stanford. They had labs, and so I was at China Lake Navy facilities. That's where they did a lot of some of the UFO studies. Not Roswell, but similar. And they're interested in other kinds of technologies. I remember we were trying to develop an ultrasonic missile in water. Chinese have that now using cavitation again, where they put a bubble around the torpedo so that it can move faster than sound through water.
Yes, we one of our big interviews, we went into cavitation, and I put all that video in there. For those who haven't seen those, you should look them up, because it was back in the day. I would record it, and then I would spend the next few weeks looking up everything and overlaying it. And now
this is how you got your knowledge base. You'd be able to discern who's who out there, intellectually and substance.
What are in the documents in Area 51 that you saw? Or if you, presumably that you saw documents.
I saw so many different documents. What actually happened was that there were a couple hundred documents on the table. I just started grabbing them and reading, jumping, how you brief scan something. You look at pictures, you da-da-da-da-da. And then the door opened. I had like 1 hour to brief myself, and then the door opened, and I saw her. Krill was... It's getting hard. Each time I try to remember it clicks in. It felt feminine. The reason I did my studies on synthetic telepathy later on Alan Fry's work was I couldn't understand how this entity could be talking to me in my head. I couldn't understand that. I've subsequently written a paper called Synthetic Telepathy in the Early Mind Wars, and it has a history of timeline on the studies using what we call synthetic telepathy. That's your 0.3 to 3 gigahertz. That is one of the reasons they want to use smart meters. They can place a voice anywhere they want to for law enforcement. I can't remember anything after that. I don't know what they did. I don't know how that works. I went through debriefing. I sense that a door will open at some moment when I need it to open, and then I'll understand what happened then. It was very interesting. She asked for me, and how I know it was her, I don't. It felt feminine. I felt safe, and that's what I remember.
I've known some feminines that don't make you feel safe.
No, I didn't mean it like yeah.
Was the ticks?
No. It felt like my mother. I had similar emotional feelings. How much of that was real? And
yeah, I was going to say, how do you know that wasn't It wasn't something they do to. What was the ticks that create Lyme disease intentionally released into society?
I don't think so. I think that that's something that mutated, like HIV. HIV was vectored out of a steward for United Airlines. I think it was United or Delta, one of those that went down into the Bahamas. And that's where it was first vectored to create the HIV and AIDS. Yeah, they were a virus that mutated, kind of like a herpes or, other kinds of related viral infections that rewrite genetics on a local scale in a given point of exposure. And there are different kinds and there are different classifications of it. What they were originally using to treat that was gentian violet with long ultraviolet light to try to kill it on a cellular level. They today, with Lyme's disease, are using pharmaceutical mushrooms and the beta-glucan studies. And apparently it's working in some of the universities in Wisconsin and Maryland, a couple of others that are doing studies, mostly in the Midwest. Those were the big AIDS, not AIDS, tick studies are, with Lyme's disease.
On that krill, back to the krill, what race of reptilian was it? Like Nordic reptilian? What species?
It was a gray. It was a 7.5-foot gray. Had a very long neck, oval face. Appeared to be sexless in that it had some kind of covering that covered the whole being. It was like they were naked, but they weren't, and so the whole thing was inside a suit of some kind. But it was a 7.5-foot gray, different than the little tiny grays that we normally would associate with close encounter. This one was 7.5 feet. It was a gray. That's what I saw. And her name was Krill. And Whitley Schreiber, I think others have written about her in a more sci-fi thing. Jacques Vallée, others had also spoken about that. My studies didn't take me into alien. I did some debriefing on alien technology with metals. I did some studies with what we call smart metals, but I didn't do any alien studies at all.
The word you say smart metal, what comes to my mind is the opposite of that would be Ozzy Osbourne.
This artifact I did was actually at the University of Chicago in the vaults down underneath. They brought in the metal. They never told me where it came from. The scuttlebutt was that it had come from the Florida Everglades, and it had a shape to it. And the first thing I did was I fired a .50 caliber cannon at it and then went down with an electron microscope to look at lattice damage. And what it did is it deformed everything with the .50 caliber cannon. When it hit it, it just wrapped around it, and then the thing just kind of flowed back into its original shape again, like water. It was very unnerving to see that. That's why we called it memory metal. It had memory of its previous structure before it was impacted. And what I did is I went down on the point of impact to look for lattice damage, and I didn't find anything. And that was impossible. And it was like 100 times stronger than diamond. And yet it was like foil, tinfoil, crumple it, and then it would flow back out into its shape again. That's electrophoresis. And I determined it was electrophoresis, and that's where my study stopped and somebody else took over. That was at the University of Chicago where I did that one. That was normally Wilbur Franklin's bailiwick. He was out of Kent State for MRU. Dr. Carl Schleicher. We both worked for him. I was Northwest Regional Director, which has got me into China Lake and things like that. The Broom Lake was an invite, and the Chicago was that Bill did not have my background in solid-state physics, and that's why they brought me in there. So I don't know where the metal came from. Might have come from the territories up north of Winnipeg. there were crashes up there also. I don't know.
All right, I'm trying to. I think I caught up. Because somebody was commenting on this Nintennial Smart Metal. It's NINT.
Well, we have metals now that did not exist back then. One of which is a fullerene. Now, carbon has an unusual lattice that allows itself to bond on a single molecular sheath, forming one molecule, one atom thick. Now, if you have exactly 60 of them, they form a buckyball. And C60 and C120, 120 molecules. And that structure in nanocarbon fibers, where you have a buckyball and another buckyball and you form a tube of them, is like the metal I fired my cannon at. But that was back in the 70s, and we didn't even know about shungite and C60 buckyballs until the 90s. Buckminster Fuller was the one that first came out with that. Actually, it was Bob Marshall, which is another book I've written called The Marshall Papers. There was this idiot savant that was a mathematical genius. He was brilliant. He lived out of Fort Bragg, California, and was unfortunately addicted to heroin. But he was a mathematical idiot savant that Buckminster Fuller used, came up with the geodesic dome, the vector equilibrium matrix, and all the math behind that. And what I did was I have all his writings, and I gave that to a group of hedronists, people that are into sacred geometry, and had them make mathematical comment on his works. And it's quite interesting. He, I'll give you a typical example. One chapter is Euler was a mathematician about 100 years ago that challenged the community to come up with a mathematical expression for recurring primes. Nobody's been able to ever do that. 17, 19, 23.
Well, actually, I want to mention that I've had James McKenney on the show. He come up with a function to calculate primes, wrote a book on it. And one of the things he warned about was the breaking of codes based on security, based on prime numbers, now that you can actually calculate them. So I actually had the book. Frankly, I haven't read it. But he supposedly...
Well, the way Bob Marshall did it was he envisioned a cone, three-dimensional cone, that had a certain pitch to it. And then he took and did a cone of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, around the thing in a different cone straight, and then he could draw a straight line through the recurring primes. He was able to do it that way. Unbelievable. He did it visually. That was just one thing. He wrote everything out on a little tablet. He did little tablets of mathematicals. And then I had a bunch of people take a look at it to try to figure out what it all means. That's going to be a very interesting book. Bob Marshall was the one that envisioned the buckyball. He did that in the 80s. I saw fullerenes or something equivalent to fullerenes that was as strong as that in the 70s. I don't know of any technology that humans have that would do that. Carol Rosen and others are friends of mine that worked for von Braun, and talk about breakaway technology, and that's possible because I've seen that in the military with my own access. And so not to the extent that is being suggested in the Disclosure Project with Greer and those guys, but it's not far-fetched because my guess is we didn't start here on Earth. We started on Mars. And the asteroid belt is something I don't even want to speculate on what that might have been at one time. A war. I don't know. I know that when I was teaching in Shiprock, New Mexico, at the Navajo Community College, they talked about giants that were cannibals that ate the Indians, the Nephilim. They were giants that were cannibals. They hunted man like a grizzly bear might. And that's when you watch the Predator movies, like Prometheus, that might be what was found in stasis in Antarctica. I don't know.
Something went on. Something went on there because you had all these famous politicians going down there, and something was going on. And Buzz Aldrin, was it Buzz Aldrin? No, Neil Armstrong ends up getting evacuated, and of course he could have been hallucinating for being ill, but he said something was going on.
No. Even Ed Mitchell, it was a personal friend of mine, and some of the work I did on creating the ESP protocols for Navy SEALs was mission control with him in '71. And Ed Mitchell has had close encounter experiences he used to talk about. So are aliens real? My response would be, how could they not be? To what extent? That's the $64,000 question. And I don't know that we're ever really going to know what's going on. If you want to know what an alien is, I would say the closest thing right now is an AI. And that's pretty scary. The possibilities of it. Just possibilities.
How about you ever met rocket scientist Dave Adair?
No, I haven't met him. No.
How about him. Any thoughts on Bob Lazar?
Lazar wasn't working at Broom Lake. He was a contractor that would go in and do certain things. So right out of the gate, some of his credibility has been tarnished with terms of where he could have gotten access to. You'll notice it isn't the ones that were actually doing the real work. There are very few of us, like myself, that actually were physically there, done that, and have no idea what it was about, really. My work was mostly paranormal, and I did all kinds of weird things. I mean, all kinds of weird things. I'm watching how Carillion photography is making a comeback, and I wrote on the physical mechanisms of that, which later led to MRI technology. And that'll be in another book I'm writing called Spook Central, on the work I did for MRU.
I had trouble when I was in hospital last year. I had MRI, and I felt the phasing in my head between left and right.
Well, magnetic fields of that extent.
It was horrendous, though. I mean, I've known people who
salts everything. You have grain migration and drift from those big, huge magnetic fields. And right now, that's why you go lunatic with the full moon and what's going on right this minute.
I know. So they stick my head inside this giant magnet, and I'm telling you, I was yelling out to them to stop. I knew if you stopped, I knew I had some infection that they had to figure out in my brain. Right. So, but if I stopped, I'd have to start again, whatever. But it was crazy, and I've known people who had
you had to go through that. Yeah,
I know people who had MRIs though.
Something. I have discovered that it used to be placebo accounted for 20% of all healing, and today I'm going to say it's almost 60%. How's that change? Believing what's going on is more accurate than what they're diagnosing you with.
Well, I mean, I've known people who had MRIs in the head. All right, never said nothing about this. They said it was loud, banging, and it didn't bother me, right? Because I can close my eyes and I can vision myself in a field or whatever. It didn't bother me, right? But that phase shifting in my head drove me crazy.
All of us are different in our responses to stimuli. Like, I can't hear certain things. My girlfriend can, with rain falling. Can you hear the rain falling? No, I can't hear it. Is a coffee whistling in another room? No, I can't hear it. We're all different in our senses. And I psychically, too. And so if you think there's something going on, you're going to make it happen.
Well,
so that's what I meant by placebo,
So I still, to this day, I don't know what happened. I mean, it was, they said I had to take another one because I had to measure the change in my ventricles in my brain, and I told them I wouldn't do it. I said, I don't care. If you told me I was going to die, I would not do that again. But then they said, well, we can give you something that'll relax you. And the doctor didn't understand why it would hurt. So why would that happen? And I said, I don't know. I mean, I'm a musician. And he goes, oh, okay, I can understand. What does that mean? You know?
It means that you pay attention to certain things most of us ignore.
Well, I couldn't help but pay attention. My brain was folding.
Why you had trouble.
It was folding in my head. That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
And
likely it was messing up your cell salts, and you could sense it, and you had warning bells.
Well, I've had a rough year after that, though. I mean, a lot of stuff, hasn't been the same.
How are you doing now? You look like you're feisty and grumpy, and you look like you're in really good shape.
I would be okay, except for the, the drama of the business and work and
Yeah.
death and all that. I would be okay other than that.
You got more hair than I do. I'm bald as a... Yeah. I have a little queue left. Mine's just a little tiny one. I remember when I used to have a lot of hair.
Oh, it's getting
those
smaller.
days are gone. When I was a Navy SEAL, I had a goatee. I had, I looked real bad. I got a picture.
Wait, any knowledge of the inner Earth, of an inner Earth?
There is no the entire of Earth is honeycombed all the way down 100 miles. You know where they found the Stargate up in the northern part of Iraq is more than 100 miles down in these caverns. And then we talked about the Aborigine out of Scotland running tunnels all the way down into Turkey. That's impressive. Yes, there's hollow Earth, and I live here in the free state of Jefferson in Oregon, where we have the Goonies. We got all these caves, and believe me when I tell you, there's caves that are 4.5 hours on motorcycle that are that long. You can go entire length of the East Coast without coming to the surface. It's and then in Los Angeles, look at those sub bases out there, submarine bases under L.A.
Somebody wrote, some men have hair, the rest have brains.
Yeah, I have hair. How did Bill Cosby put it? And I love Bill Cosby. I know that he was a bad man in some ways, maybe, but I love Bill Cosby. And he says, I'm now growing hair where I don't even want it out of my nose and ears.
All right, I'm gonna give the last call in the chat room here.
Yeah.
So wind it up.
I enjoy being with you, James. And if you guys want to prep up, I'm going to send you the white sheet I did with links on this earth field that's quite scary.
I just had a vision of you writing this all out on a white sheet. And I'm going to get it in the mail. I'm going to get a sheet all folded up with all the writing on it.
Yeah. I'm going to send you a document with a bunch of descriptions on what the link goes to on having to do with 5G and the Earth thing that Lockheed got. Lockheed is going to try to shove this down everybody's throat because it's a lot of money involved. And
well, since we can't block it, I guess it's going to go down our throats.
Well, it's a wrong direction of technology. Just in power, if you were to put these buoys, we have buoys in Oregon that go up and down with tides. And if you put those up in Nova Scotia where the tides run 60 feet every day, that's enough tide power to, feed the entire East Coast over all the nuclear reactors out there now. And the New Madrid fault line needs to be turned off. It needs to be turned off now.
How do you turn it off?
Public protest. That's how we did it in Oregon and Washington. That's how they're trying to do it in California.
The New Madrid fault line. Right?
New Madrid fault line.
How do you turn off a fault line?
You stop it. You turn off the nuclear power plant.
Oh, okay. All right. I got you. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Because that whole thing is going to split the United States into two countries, and it's all going to be radioactive.
Oh, boy, we've got a lot of stuff to look forward to here.
Yeah.
We got some fun.
If you don't do it, it's going to happen, and you can count on it. And that's why this epoch, the sixth epoch, is trial by fire.
Hey, you know, it's like this. Hey, guys, are you sleeping too well at night? Listen to Doc Graham. He'll keep you up all night. From radioactive fallout to sewage, toxic sewage. The Doc Graham's got it all.
Thanks. That felt good, man. I have another one right here.
Well,
thanks, James, for having me.
But, you know, stuff's got to be talked about, and you're not going to find it.
Yes. And I'm glad that the next time you prompt me up early, you guys in the chat rooms, get your questions lined up, and I'll try to address them one by one so that, you know, you have the direction on where to study more. I'll send you this earth fence that Lockheed is doing. It's quite scary.
All right, I'll post it. One last question. Any thoughts on red elk? Red elk. Red elk? He's a guy. He's a man. Native American.
I knew black elk, and I knew black elk's grandson, grandson. I knew him.
Red elk was an Art Bell guy. I mean, he was on Art Bell. I mean, I've had him on my show too. We talk about him.
Yeah.
One of the things I remember him talking about was the going down in the tunnels. The Native Americans and Mexicans throughout their family history have had their own tunnel.
Yeah, the whole of down there near Taos, New Mexico, that all is honeycombed. It's probably got Chupacabra and big dinosaurs flying out of the caves there.
Well, he said that you know, each family has their own historic caves, you know, that they pass down the information. And he was down in his cave, and he saw Satan, who was real tall. So that was one of his stories. He come up with some good yarns. So
there's, I think, like Skinwalker Ranch and some of these other places, like the Oregon Vortex, where there are anomalies in the Earth, like a mini black hole or something, that might be bending light to 20,000 feet. I don't know. I haven't done the research. Skinwalker Ranch is newer, but it wouldn't surprise me that there are gates in different points on the Earth. That's what the Stargates were originally all about up in the northern part of Iraq and the Yazidi. So, I don't know. I know that there's previous technologies could do things we haven't gotten to yet.
If you guys go to my original website, I got a link on Feet to the Fire Radio. In the original website, I do have an archive set up to go through the shows I've done, because, you know, I've been doing this for a while. And you could probably type in Red Elk, and those will come up, and you'll have to, in those days, the show was 4 hours long, multiple guests, etc. And so you may have to either listen to the show or kind of fast forward through it. But he had some he had some interesting stories. But I have read the book Red Elk Speaks. That's where my song The Ancient One kind of got inspiration from. So that's my Black Elk connection there. I read that book. It was pretty interesting. Richard, it looks like it's about time. It's been a couple hours already, huh?
Yeah, and I like being with you. I wished I could come back to Chicago where we could go have a couple beers again. I enjoyed that. That was my time with you. It was fun back there.
Yeah, you're one of the few people that I actually got to meet from the world. Matt Stein, unfortunately, during that time I met you the second time, that's when I first met Matt Stein and took a picture with him, and now he is passed on. So
I can't believe it either. Matt was alive teaching downhill skiing one day, and the next he was dead as a doornail from aortic aneurysm. He had a bubble and it popped, and he gone just like that. No, I mean, just
kind of, you know, it's how it goes, I guess. You know, it's. Well, I'm glad I got to meet him finally. I mean, I've had him on my show many times. In fact, he's got. I showed it last week. There's a great book. I mean, he wrote about the EMP danger and all that, but he wrote a book when technology fails. It's a fabulous. I actually got an extra copy, and I was thinking of having some kind of contest for people, because everybody should buy this thing, because it's like a Bible as far as surviving if you don't have this knowledge, I mean, you have this with you, it could tell you how to do everything from cook to build a sun-heated house. I mean, it's an amazing book. And he was moved by God, he said, to do this. He was an engineer, and he put it out there and actually lost money on it, like most people who do good things. But second printing came out even bigger and better. So if you look for that online. And then speaking of writing things about surviving, Richard Miller has a whole plethora of stuff. All his little, on the bottom he had scrolling, you can go, I always see the Doc Ram is still up there. I'll have to change that. But you can go to his website. He's got books. He's got e-books. There's a million things in there, and he's made it very affordable. And unlike a lot of guys who have worked for the military and all this stuff, he's actually living on his writings. So if you like Richard L. Miller, it's great you're here, you're talking, it's fine, but it's good to actually consume some of his products as well, which I recommend.
Yeah, thank you for that. A starving artist comes to mind.
Yeah, but it actually shows you you're a good...
to Chicago and, sing for my dinner. If any of you ever want to help organize another workshop, I love coming back there where I do it in person. I'd rather than online and, through video.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, Richard, I think we'll call it a night. And we'll pick it up again maybe in another month or so. I love being with you, James, so thank you. Yeah, it's fun. And then, like somebody mentioned in the chat room, they like listening to you because as you're talking along, you're dropping all these, like, Easter eggs along the way that, like, boom, 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 boom. And now, all of a sudden people go back and listen to it again, and they start picking the pieces up there. So you have the live listening, and then you have the forensic listening. So
repeat, yeah.
So we'll talk, Richard. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you take care. I'm gone. Bye-bye.